Welcome, everyone, to Cosmic Convergence. We are an experiencer hosted podcast that balances introspection with the pursuit of understanding deep mysteries of the universe. Join us as we dive into the fascinating realms of extraterrestrial intelligence, consciousness, and more. Jeff Reed started researching Ivan 0135 and the Skinny Bob video mysteries more than 5 years ago as a personal curiosity. He eventually expanded his search for the truth of the footage and is here to share his in-depth thoughts on it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
No
Jeff.
problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, first of all, like we're all huge fans of Skinny Bob and the footage, and it's been around for years and years now. And I know that like when we were kind of talking before the show, that it's always just kind of popping up every few, like every year, or like even every few months, like it's always popping on Reddit and other different communities that are part of the UFO community, and it's never really been debunked. It's never been fully like, okay, this is actually all made up and we can just throw this under the debunk train and move on from there. So would love to hear any of the insight you've found with your research, Jeff. And I heard that you have a presentation for us today.
Yeah, I can go through the videos. We can play the videos. I've got some slides. I've got some key images from skinnybob.info, a great website if anybody hasn't seen it. Hopefully everybody has seen it, but go look at it again. And then yes, I have some slides of some of the personal stuff I put together that are impactful to me. But all that I kind of have prepared basically make me convinced that it's something that I lean towards it being real. So,
Okay, Jeff. So, just real quick, could you describe the first time you ever saw the footage? Because usually that first time always sticks in our minds, right? Could you describe the first time that you saw that footage and thought, there might or there might not be something to this? Because the first time I know the first time that I saw the Skinny Bob footage, I was like, there's no way that all of this, but something inside of me was just like, I could see why there's certain things, and I know we'll go over it in the presentation. There's some things that would make people believe that, no, this is bunk because of one or two filters or whatever have you, and they just throw it by the wayside. But if you really look deep into it, which we will in this episode, you start to go, I feel like there's something there. And so it's just like, what was your first reaction when you saw this?
okay, so I have looked back at my notes and I actually don't remember the first time I looked at the series. But there was one time in the spring, I believe it was the spring of 2019, that I was looking at it. I was deep in the throes of my PhD, finishing it, maybe 2 or 3 months away from finishing it. And I remember looking at the video series and going, okay, there's something here. I know it's not just a simple hoax. I can't figure out exactly where the problem is, or like where usually really clearly you can see that something is CGI, in my opinion. There's also varying opinions on this I can talk about later. But I remember at that moment in the spring, it was okay, I know something's this, I know something's about this. I want to look at this more. I can't right now. So I really did. I shelved it. I put it away, shelved it, didn't have any notes or anything like that. But going back into my other notes of conversations, I did have something in 2018 where I had seen it, but I don't remember the first time I actually saw it. So a bit of a different question, a bit of a different answer than your question, but
No,
that's
that's
the truth.
fine.
Yeah, yeah. But then, so in the summertime of 2019, that's when I was done my PhD, came back, and I was like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write down everything that I could find on this topic. So all the different all the different videos, all the different like nuances. What is this? Why is that there? There's this detail that stands out, and I had a huge list. And I did that was one of the first things that I posted on. I think it was Our Aliens or something that I initially posted as, hey, this is my review of Skinny Bob. Please, have a look, tell me what you think. Got pretty good attention for that. And then into the fall, there was a bit of communication with a guy by the name of Ben Phillips. He's
Mhm.
also been periodically involved with this topic. And then come January 2020, that's when it's kind of all started. Was I started the subreddit, r skinny bob, and then kind of just grew it from there to detail and assess as much public information as we could find in a group. So,
Yeah, and just one more thing. Thanks for sharing that. Just one more thing that R is slash R slash is on Reddit. It's a group chat on Reddit, and I'll tell you what. How is the overall like, let's say, the Skinny Bob chat on Reddit? How is the overall feel of the users in there? Is it pretty much like everywhere else in Reddit, where it's like you'll be able to pick out little nuggets, and then it's a lot of debunkers that are just like laughing and being like, is it pretty well moderated? Is it, or is it just like the rest of Reddit kit, which at some point in time can be a big trash heap? I'm sorry.
no, it's a fair point. It's a very fair point. And you know what? I would compare it to other websites too that have covered Skinny Bob. So it's not just Reddit. It's other it's other websites that have covered this topic. I have attempted to foster a very supportive community around just analyzing it as best we can, and you know, being honest with our own knowledge and that we don't actually know definitively.
Correct.
Um, we have to have that level of humility in life and work together. Um, the peak of this was really when we found the overlays, which I'll talk later, and
Mhm.
source the overlays. It was, very challenging to a lot of people's beliefs on the topic, but it was unequivocal. Like we have to be honest about what is real and what
Mhm.
is traceable. So it's been the group I wouldn't say heavily moderated because I think everybody's been honestly really great. There's been a few people that have been disruptive over the years, so it's really not that it's an ongoing thing. I'm really proud of the group. Like I'm really proud of the group that everybody kind of works together and works together kindly, and there's not much, disruptive behavior because it just helps everybody be more relaxed in the topic and
Yes.
come to it with humility.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
we should all be able to come to the table and have a discussion about this without being vile. And I
Yeah.
know that I've been on that subreddit, and I've at least perused it, and it looks like it's a lot more mature as far as attitudes go than
Yeah.
like others. So I want to applaud everybody participating in that subreddit, that they're doing a fine job, and please continue to do so with any more information that may come out one way or the other, so we can get down to the bottom of this. Thank you guys for and ladies, for your maturity on this. I really appreciate
Yeah,
that.
the civility has been just so nice.
Mhm.
Uh, we really need more civility in life.
Please. Please.
Source, the original source is Ivan0135, and it is, as far as we can find on the internet, the original source of the videos. So no other upload has been prior to this. There has been lots of claims that there have been prior, but this is the original upload. To start, this emblem is a KGB emblem, but it is not the typical KGB emblem. I can't remember what the exact uh, alteration is, but it is a sub uh, um, emblem. Has appeared in another video. It may be sourced from that video. It may be also copied from a shared source beyond, but in either way, this is not unique to this video series. We notice that there's a bit of bumping. There's just the videos. Um, the original clip here, this shows some sort of, plantation style house, southern US, acacia house. Um, it has, dormers on the roof. Um, it has a yard. It has a fence. You can see perhaps along here. Apparently, there's the UFO in the background. Some people have thought this is a blimp, perhaps. Doesn't necessarily match the shape of a blimp, but I can see how people would equate to that. There's a couple items, objects that come across in the front frame here.
Like power
Those have
lines.
attempted,
Mhm.
yeah, power lines perhaps. So yeah, these are of interest if anybody has any ideas what exactly these are, though.
Mhm.
They don't necessarily match that they are power lines,
Correct.
but they are of interest. I have other images that are a bit stabilized, but you have, of course, the UFO here. You have these long buildings. We don't know exactly what they are. Some people have thought greenhouses. If it's the time period, I've looked up greenhouses of the time period, and they really didn't have large, elongated greenhouses. Could be other buildings as well. We're not sure. Very shaky, obviously, shows the UFO some more, but some pretty clear images of it. Um, Then we have sort of the crash scene. Presumably, this is Skinny Bob here. I have another image that I can show you later, but we have, Skinny Bob in the foreground. The camera is walking towards. I can demonstrate that later. Shiny suit, and then we've got the crash scene. The crash scene, bumping around here. An alien in the foreground, possibly dead, possibly alive. This is the autopsy clip. Got some detail in the background. I've made a composite image. So this is a back and forth of this um, aerial scene. And if you look down here along this line here, this wasn't known until maybe a year ago that there is possibly a train
Yes.
that is moving along, and you can see it kind of moving
Mhm.
with the foreground, and even off to the left here. On the left, there is some you know movement that is
Mhm.
equal to the same.
I never noticed that the first time. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe, I mean, maybe this here in the foreground here is a tunnel that goes underneath. Not sure though. Really don't know. But of course, the main piece is the UFO. The UFO is consistent throughout the different clips. It's hard to tell. There's a lot of shaking that goes along. The camera does walk towards. I have another image that I can show on this. But
Yes.
some people have hypothesized that on the left-hand side here, there's an army personnel. There is also a hypothesis that that the craft is in the background, perhaps in the back left here.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I don't go like there's a level for me where speculations start to take over versus um, mathematical or very broadly accepted clear facts. Um, in this case, I think it's easy to demonstrate that the video is coming closer to uh, presumably Skinny Bob here. It's a composite view, and what it does is it has the clip in the beginning and at near the end. And at the beginning, you can see that it's farther away. Like this is the full frame, this is the full image, but
Yeah.
then it comes in closer. So then I had to adjust it to be smaller. So there's quite a bit of a movement that comes across. So you can see it also has a bit of uh, shaking as well. But the crash scene, first of all, I'll show you a panorama. I'll make this bigger. This is a panorama that I made, or a composite view that I made. I adjusted the contrast and the brightness and blended it together.
Mhm.
And basically, yeah, it shows kind of the whole view. Now, there's a detail within this when you're looking at this image is that the scroll across is pretty equal in location. But what happens is when the camera pans down, this is technically not the actual distance that it may presume to be. And the
Hmm.
reason is if we agree that the person is walking in this scene, they are coming down but they're also walking towards this. So when you walk towards an object, it can make it look bigger. So
Yes.
technically speaking, it could have been farther away, or it should be farther away in appearance
Mhm.
than what this is.
Mhm.
So it's hard to tell specifically, but this is generally speaking all the frames lined up um, and across. And in addition to this, it's pretty clear that there is movement because the camera does rotate around a fair bit. around the being on the ground here, and it does show some details that I can show off later. So,
Really
oh,
quick,
go ahead. Yeah.
I had a quick question. So, has anybody gone through with kind of figuring out possibly what type of camera this could have been? They could have been using or anything, especially that time period.
Is it okay?
Um,
Vision.
I have a whole bunch of tabs open on this topic that I haven't done an assessment on, but my main takeaway is that there's lots of cameras that could have been used at the time,
Okay.
period. Like there just is lots of cameras. Even in the other clip that we'll talk about later, the family vacation clip, there are lots of hidden cameras that could have been used at the time. 8mm is generally considered to be what was used if this is authentic. Yes, there's lots of cameras that have been done, but nothing definitive that has been known. Like we don't know exactly. So this is a video of the crash scene again here. So it's the same thing, just a little bit stabilized. Um, and it's a good, stabilized view because it helps just see a little bit more detail. You can see here at the end, see how this is quite a bit more bulgy. The shadow is a bit more round. If you go to the panorama, you could see how much it's actually elongated. So it means the person really does come from near the feet or more so near the feet and all the way around to the right to look in. Um, yeah.
Yes.
And especially coming down to the ground, coming closer to the ground as well. So there's quite a bit of like active movement within the scene. And it's something that kind of gets lost. So if you just look at this and you're watching it, okay, stuff's going on, you're seeing a craft, you're seeing something on the ground. There's a lot of details that get thrown in, and it even goes down to the finger level here that I do believe that there is movement in the finger.
Yes. In both hands.
In possibly both hands, yes, yes.
Yes.
I identified that I think a few years ago, and I think it is accurate to what is actually being shown. There hasn't been too much counter points that exist on this, but there is the point that the camera does come down lower to the ground and does possibly see some hills, changes in hills. Um, it's hard to describe what I'm meaning, but if you're looking at it from higher up, these could be the shadow here could be connected of the two fingers from a certain angle, and as you get closer down towards the ground, they could separate because you're seeing you don't see the hill anymore, perhaps. So there's lots of details. Yeah, yeah. Here's the movement of the finger. So this is a video here that shows, and I did an assessment on this, and my assessment was mainly within the 1.3 seconds or so that the finger brings itself down, it doesn't, it's not logical to believe that the person would be able to turn the whole body around the being as to appear as if the finger was
Correct.
going down. Now, it's also that the finger was more clearly straight outwards to begin with,
Yes.
and this isn't even the beginning of that part where it shows the finger out. But yeah, so in A was the first one I found. It does presumably fall down really quick
It
or
curls.
move. It
Yes.
curls. Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
Good description there. Um, and not enough. Again, not enough that rotation around the body would make it look like it curls. It truly, authentically to me looks like it curls, and it's just like one of those details that holds me to think that
Mhm.
if it's fabricated, somebody had to do this. Everything that is laid out in this video series had to have been created either physically in a puppet or a physical diorama or
Animatronics, whatever have you.
animatronics. All that had to have been done, or digitally.
Yes.
All that had to be done. So every little detail that you're adding, that we're noting here, it's either that it's a real scene that is really recorded and shows exactly what's going on, and that's a possibility, however unlikely that is, but it's a possibility. Or every detail we see, down to the suit, down to the head movement, down to the finger movement, had to have been created. So, it's compelling. So the bottom one here, a little bit harder to see. I guess I could make that bigger. I'm sorry. There you go. Um, the bottom one, it's a combination of the fingers possibly moving and then the shadow that I'm not as convinced, but it does still seem to be that it moves. Like
Yeah, there's a
the
little bit of
fingers, the
movement.
fingers open up. They kind of
Uh-huh.
open up apart from each other.
Yeah, it's
And
the
there's another detail, one more detail. I believe that the arm, because of the rotation of the body, the arm stays relatively pointed towards the camera person. And I believe that the arm is actually coming up a little bit too, like towards the
Mhm.
camera a little bit. But what was your question?
I was just gonna say, yeah, with so I've worked with cameras before. I've done videography and stuff. Like that shadow on the ground wouldn't change just by moving that camera. You would still have that
Hmm.
same effect. So the arm and hand must be at least moving a little bit for it to see its very tail end.
Now I know that that part of the analysis as well with this footage and the panoramic. Thank you. And is that it's possibility again, it's speculation that some of the tracks that there appear to be tracks,
Hmm.
foot tracks around the body. I
Yeah.
can't help but say to myself, victim, around the victim
Hmm.
of this crash, and that it indicates possibly not just being sheerly ejected from the craft, but coming out of the craft and stumbling around a bit. There is some speculation that, if we were to look at the being that's down below right now,
Yep.
that those could be track marks of footprints into
Yep.
which it was kind of maybe stumbling around before it fell over.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
and I, when I see these, sorry, Jeff, when I see these, and I'm trying to picture it as if it was an actual event, it kind of brings a little bit of sadness. I know that there's a lot of people that can see some detachment because, again, if this is even real, that is a alien. But I look at it as if it was like, what if it was me, like, or what if like the astronauts, they flew to the moon, Neil Armstrong's getting all jazzed because he's going to go walk on it, and then suddenly somehow they get shot down and Neil Armstrong's stumbling around the surface of the moon and then he falls over, and it's kind of like if you try to put oneself in that position, that kind of makes me a little bit sad. It's not saying we did shoot it down, maybe there's some other kind of accident or something like that, but this is potentially a real life creature
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
lived, breathed, possibly had emotions, probably, had a mission, whatever have you, and this is their potentially their final resting place. And it's just kind of like I don't know. It's like it's like seeing victims of a plane crash. You would feel kind of the same way, I think. And so maybe those are footprints. I don't know, of course. I mean, they could just be because it looks kind of like a sandy
Hmm.
kind of like a beach area, or
Yep.
maybe yeah, near a lake or something like that. And so to think that those are potential footprints is just mind-boggling to me, really.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe even Skinny Bob helped his friend co-pilot out of the craft. We don't know. Yeah.
Don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, uh, the craft up here, by the way,
Hmm.
one of the details that I identified through images, and then the fellow at skinnybob.info did a good little GIF about it, is the smoke movement.
Hmm.
So the smoke and the fire, the flame along the edge. This is something that I did in image form, and I thought it was pretty convincing that the smoke was billowing up and different from the beginning to the end of the clip. Because this is one part of the clip. There's a section just before that also shows a little bit of the smoke. Um, but to me, and maybe you guys agree, it does clearly show that there's smoke billowing out of this. And
Mhm.
again, if it is, it means it's a detail that was added, whether it's fabricated or it's a real possible event. Um, you know, this is logical. Like this is logical that there is things burning and smoke coming off of them.
Right. Has anybody been able to find the asset of that smoke? Because we're big now about, oh, I found the asset, the MH370 stuff. Oh, found these assets, these clouds. Has
Oh,
anybody been able to specifically find the asset for that smoke?
no, no, no. It's a good question. I mean, maybe somebody can then from that prompt go out and try a search for one.
There you go.
Um, I think it would be a tall order given the age of the video.
Hmm.
Um, it's been, since 2011, so it's been 13 years now. Um, there's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of change. Now, we did find, the assets of the overlay, and I can go into that a bit later.
Okay.
So there is, you know, but this craft, there's been a couple crafts that have looked like it. People have done some comparisons to it, but it's a fairly unique craft that uh, doesn't seem to appear anywhere else. Yeah.
Definitely looks like the one in that original flight video.
Yes, yes, it does. To me, in 2011 and since and prior, there has been no hoax or attempted hoax that has come out that has been this detailed. So if you want to just like leave alone when people think it's, CGI or real or puppets or whatever, the effort that anybody went through to make this video series is off the charts. It's off the charts. It doesn't exist. No fabrication hoax to date has gone into this much detail with this much breadth of information. We have, I call them the CCA clips, which are craft, crash, and autopsy clips. We have the insignia in the front. We've got the house view, the sky view, the second half of the sky view. They are bridged. We have possibly Skinny Bob standing in the field. We've got the craft burning, that scene, and then we've got the autopsy clip, which has three different clips within it. We have the Skinny Bob clips, which has the three different clips that are within it. The response video, which has a very well designed or real uh, handprint, and then the family vacation clip, which is in color and a different scenario, a different frame rate. So it's like the amount of actual details that somebody has put into this is off the charts. So yeah, this is the scene here of the autopsy. This is again a composite view. It goes across the body. It shows the arm, swings up to show some hands movement, uh, quite possibly digging into the chest. Um, Comes down to the face, and then it shows another face clip, which is different than this composite view. Some people thought there's a lens on the eye here. It does kind of look like there's a lens. I have a hypothesis that it really doesn't, go anywhere or mean much, but I have a hypothesis that these are like their augmented reality
Hmm.
lenses that go over and sort of cup over the eye. So they look larger as eyes, sort of like our sunglasses look like big bug eyes. Um,
Mhm.
but these are sort of like a technology that gets put over the eye that sort of projects everything they need, whether it be, information, light data, um, maybe dimming of light, bringing out light if it's dark, who knows? But the reason I say it is because this lens or so that appears to be, it definitely doesn't look like that in the other clips with Skinny Bob. This
Mhm.
big thing doesn't seem to exist over it. A lot of hoaxes of alien autopsy hoaxes, they tend to use a metal tray and they tend to do that for dramatic effect. It's steel, it's cold, it's sterile. Whereas in actual medicine, they put cloths out on the table because you can sterilize your equipment beforehand and then lay it out and also
Hmm.
collect it very easily afterwards without having to touch the material, without having to touch the equipment, risking getting poked or anything like that. And just the way that the cloth folds over the edge of the tray. I mean, this is another one of those details that you have to admit it's so detailed and so unique that somebody either had to remember to put that in an accurate way um, in a scene if they're hoaxing it, um, or they or it was a real event that was actually filmed. Um, Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of people that actually believe that this scene was CGI or a puppet. I mean, they don't think a lot of people tend to believe that the person here, whether you want to call it a doctor or a mortician or what have you, um, is digital or fabricated. There seems to be a consensus that this is a physically real scenario and not a fabricated real scenario. So it means that regardless if it's hoax or not, it's physically real, filmed.
And I noticed that some people were on skinnybob.info. They said that usually when we see alien autopsy videos, that are faked, that there is not a cloth that's
Yeah,
over the alien body, whereas here there most definitely
interesting.
is. And
Yeah,
then of
that's an
course,
interesting detail.
yeah, I didn't notice anything about the tray until you mentioned it now. And yeah, there's so many fine little details. I know that there is some discussion about the lens over the
Mm,
eyes and whether that some of that is just a shadow that's being cast from the light above, that's showing it being larger than what it
hmm.
appears to be, kind of like, how you can have a shadow here around your eye socket at certain angles. So,
Yep.
but I mean, to me, in that frame at least, or in that composite at least, it does look like a lens to me, which would go
Hmm.
with some abductees reports. So yeah, it's just fascinating, and that's fascinating that people don't believe that that is actually a like a CGI scene there, but they actually do believe that, whether or not it's actually a real autopsy, that it is actually physically being recorded.
If this was a dome,
Hmm.
um, the light, if this is a reflection of the light, uh, it would be on this side of the eye.
Correct.
If it was, say, up on this angle here.
Hmm.
I wonder if there is some information about where the light is reflecting off the eye and the face and the body. Um, where would you guys think the light would be located? Off to the right, middle, left?
Hard. It's hard to say from like just this. I'm curious if anybody would be able to just do a brief like replication and then have the eye
Hmm.
reflective and then be
Hmm.
able to take a light source in Blender or something and then move it around, try to get that exact angle, including with the light that is on the body and then the head as well. And also making sure the light's refracting off of the table with that little
Hmm.
shadow piece as well. And then you can get the
Yes, right
right.
here.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And this edge here too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think this camera, the light would be sort of around this area,
Yeah,
middle right.
Yeah.
That would align. Maybe a
and
little bit more
above.
this way too.
If you look at the old school doctors' offices, heck, even doctors' offices now, like medical, like surgeon doctors, yeah,
Yeah.
the light is very much above, and it can be rotated in any way. And
Hmm.
so I'm picturing off, of course, off picture or off camera. I'm picturing one of those older, like, I don't know, 40s or whatever have you, doctors' lights that is able to illuminate the body in that such way, because it does seem like the light source is singular but large to me. That's what I'm imagining. So it's able to cover
Yep.
that much surface but give that much depth and gradation of skin tone and such, like that
Hmm.
shadowing. So it's, I mean, to me, that's what I picture, and that's probably something of the case. I don't feel like it's movie studio lighting.
No.
Hmm.
Well, the other thing too is everything seems to be more or less lit in the background too. I mean, there is some
Hmm.
shadowing and stuff, but there's probably what's happening is there's going to be some form of a room light, something over top, and then you have that spot that's more on the head area. But that, again, this would be curious to replicate this in Blender or some type of 3D where you're able to create those lights and try to see what comes out like shadow wise and if we could replicate it. But yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Well,
idea.
there's got to be somebody out there. Maybe the fellow at skinnybob.info can do one.
Hmm.
So there's a little bit of preamble here. Somebody can read it. The language is a little bit different than English. There's consensus that there's not much. The language, the person is a non-native English speaker, just kind of the wording and the way it's written out. What's interesting is this here.
Mhm.
Um, this corresponds to, I believe, what the video shows in the bottom left. Yeah, so this shows what is in the video bottom left here, when the time code. But we've learned that the time code is not original to the video, so it could have just been an added, like a timekeeper adding that, and then they're using that as a reference here. Yep. He's sitting in a chair. There's kind of somebody leaning over him a little bit here. I have a slide that I'll show afterwards about his neck muscle. This is the original composite video image that was made off of him standing. I think he's really cute. He's got what's called a stadiometer above his head here for measuring his height. And then there's this how to drive clip, which kind of shows some points of contact, presumably 1, 2, 3, and a thumb. And I have an image that I can show of that. It was obviously, the previous video, you can kind of make the claim that somebody was trying to hide things and do shaky camera and, up close or out of focus. But really, aside from the, somewhat blurriness at points, this is a pretty clear image that's stable and purportedly shows an alien being. And this is, of course, Skinny Bob.
What's
So,
crazy to me is if this is real, you are literally looking at a real life other entity right now, even if you
yeah.
don't realize it. That's what blows my mind every time.
Yes, and actually that feeling, when it was the late summer of 2019, I was in my house and kind of just sitting there, and I was really, really, really looking at this video. Like, it was kind of the moment when you're very much focused on the detail and trying to find something that's going to stand out. And I came to that kind of conclusion. I was like, I can't find anything that is clearly fake in this scene. His movement, and some people are really going to disagree with me on this, but that's fine. Some people think it looks like a PlayStation 2 cutscene. That's my go-to for claims. But I started like get really like anxious or excited because I had that realization. I was thinking this could quite possibly be a video of a real extraterrestrial alien, and that kind of really set me into motion for trying to find out all the details. And something that really hasn't been there on skinnybob.info, it's kind of been looked at, but he has forehead wrinkles here, or injury, and they are consistent throughout the video. So that's of interest. I think that's something that's pretty wild that somebody chose to put wrinkles on the forehead, or an injury. We don't know. And
Well,
then his.
I wanted to add really quick. So somebody we had on the show, Susie Hansen, previously, she's a contactee, and she's has a really amazing book, The Dual Soul Connection. But in her book, she mentions one of her memories is contacting a elder, being on a ship with an elder who had wrinkles and everything in his skin. So, but he was supposedly like old, like, potentially thousands of years old, whatever. But she showed like in her illustration of like, this is like he had wrinkles in his skin and everything else. So there could be an age thing, but it also could be an injury. But I just wanted to add that as a note.
I wanted to kind of say too that trying to point out to anybody that's watching this that may have some emotions to this, because I've found that my interaction with phenomena has really brought out my feelings of care and love for living creatures. I mean, I'm talking like insects, okay, and such like that, to beyond. It's really opened my eyes, and that's common for experiencers. Is not only the fact, I look at it this way, not only the fact am I looking at potentially proof of an alien, lack of a better term, being that's obviously, if it's being recorded, is surrounded by humans and is trying to give off information, and who knows if they're scared or not. I mean, I don't know, can't really tell by any of the emotions, but imagine being a captive and you have your captors, and you've okay, if those are abrasions on Skinny Bob's head, that you've already dealt with this traumatic experience about crashing or being shut down or whatever, and you're being rounded up, and then you're being brought and shown like this clip is called "How to Drive," and so this is right before the little circular panel, and I'm thinking about like how humans can be, and we can be some of the most beautiful creatures. We make such beautiful thing, art, music, and we can be so destructive and vile at the same time. And I don't know, for some reason I'm drawn to that beach scene again with the body that's moving, and then I'm drawn to this. And now you start seeing like you have like Amazon, and you have these other companies that are sending out these robots that are like delivering food and stuff like that, right? For some reason, I equate it to this. I don't know. It's because some people say that Skinny Bob may be android or at least part cyborg or something like that, just due to the jinky movements that we might see. But you ever see those clips, guys, viewers, where it's like there's one of those delivery robots that's kind of like going down the street, and you have a certain amount of people that would bash it, kick it, steal the stuff out of it, hit it with a baseball bat, and then you've got some people that will go over and that will like assist it. It's kind of like feeling compassion and emotion for something that you wouldn't normally consider alive. I can't remember what the feeling is, but it's like this
Mm-hmm.
compassion for something that's
Mm-hmm.
even mechanical. And so I'm sure I can't be the only person. And I just wonder if our viewers out there, if you can, put in the comments how you feel about that. Like, here we have like possibly an entity from somewhere else that's being surrounded by people, and what it must feel, and how you would feel if you were in that room with Skinny Bob at that time. I know it's kind of an emotional roller coaster for me. It really is. Sorry about that, Jeff. I just kind of wanted to point that out. I think it's much more deep if we look at it than just some creature sitting in a room surrounded by humans that are saying, "Hey, show us how your UFO works, or show us for where you're from." It's very
Mm-hmm.
deep. And if we were put in that position, what would we do?
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah, I like to believe that in this scenario, if it is authentic,
Mhm.
Skinny Bob would have been one of the most cared for beings on the planet.
I would hope so.
I can't see them having an inhumane approach to his welfare, because him being alive is vastly more valuable to learning information than deceased.
But I know that there's other recounts of alien interviews.
Hmm.
Some very much from the past, but that have shown what would appear to be grays that end up going into some kind of cardiac arrest or something like that. Now, again, I mean, whether those are real or not is not up to me, and we all have to make our own decisions. Not telling people what to think, even about the Skinny Bob footage. But it's kind of one of those things to where would we even really know? And perhaps at this point in time, when we had Skinny Bob in custody, if this is real, we would already know about like atmosphere, because not to interject, but I know that some people on the Reddit investigation and on skinnybob.info, it's mentioned to where the outfits that we'll see later on in Family Vacation and the outfit that Skinny Bob is wearing now is slightly different. And that is because of we gave Skinny Bob a change of clothes. And that just kind of makes me wonder if we already kind of perhaps knew what atmospheric conditions would be good for them in this clip rather than in other things that are out there that we'll
Hmm.
probably cover in future episodes. So sorry about that.
Oh, actually, it brings up a point about the clothing thing. I have a slightly different. So there's a fellow by the name of William Smith. I don't like calling him Will Smith because everybody thinks of the
Yeah.
actor, but this guy William Smith did a video, and it was about some email communication through YouTube he had about in 2014 and 2015. He made two different videos. They're basically the same content. One just has a little bit more information at the end. And the text description in that video of communicating with the person talks about additional 12 minutes, a little bit of the scene, how the left side has been cropped here, and then the clothing. My interpretation of that, and it has been some communication of that a long time ago on the Reddit, the Skinny Bob Reddit, um, and it's a little awkwardly worded to how it's interpreted. And the way I interpreted that statement is it's after the clips and human clothing were provided. So I personally believe that this item of clothing is the same as what's in the in this scene here. They're all kind of similarly shaped and formed.
Okay.
But yeah, it is open to interpretation. So what you're saying, I've heard that before.
Mhm.
My interpretation of that clip and how somebody interprets what human clothing is provided,
Mhm.
um, it's an after part of this, but it doesn't
Okay.
matter. It's not a big deal.
No, thanks for pointing that
Yeah.
out.
Oh, no
And
problem.
just one more thing. I'm not trying to jump on
Oh yeah,
what
we're
we're
good.
investigating here. Is when it comes down to the clothing, people are like, okay, well, how does Skinny Bob fit that around that neck, around that big head? And analysis of video footage seems to indicate that there is a zipper or some kind of zipping device or buttons or something to that
So
extent.
this here, it's a slightly brightened image, but to me, I mean, there's a clear seam in the center. However, it fastens together. I've made jokes that I just call it a space zipper because it's a space space zipper. Um, but
Warp
yeah,
drive, yeah.
yeah, yeah. To me, it's clear there's some sort of seam in the center, and
Who knows what they could do or how they put clothes on? I mean, they could press a button
mhm,
and then it's on you now. I don't know.
yeah,
You know.
But I noticed that some people had also said too, family vacation clip. It seems like there's some of the uniforms that they're wearing, that it's more of a pronounced like turtleneck than like in some of the other pictures. And I want people to look at it this way. Let's say this is legitimate. Okay, let's say these are legitimate uniforms that they wear. You look at any kind of business establishment, military, whatever branch, uniforms aren't all the same for every like
Mhm.
lieutenant, sergeant. There's going to be differences. And so who knows, like culturally, like the females might be wearing a more skinnier kind of neck. Okay. The males might be wearing a more puffy, kind of like a turtleneck.
That's a
We
good
don't
point.
know. Right. We
hmm
don't know.
hmm
So just because that one clip like family vacation shows them wearing something that might be a little bit different, of course, it's supposed to be a different time frame too. We can't just say, well, there's some kind of discrepancy there because the uniform looks different in one film footage than it does in another one. All that to me indicates is nothing really. You can't really draw a line one way or the other. So
hmm hmm
I think we can also
Um,
agree that the turtleneck is pretty stylish on them.
it is.
totally. Yeah, yeah.
Bring it back in style, guys.
I want to say this image here and this one down below. Oh, those are mine. But this image here um, was artificially smoothed and enhanced. I didn't make this image, but somebody made it. But it kind of gives a more, refined image of what is happening in this scene.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure people know that. One thing I want to note that we were talking about the age, and we could come around to this after when we are talking
Yeah,
about
I
this, but
apologize. Mhm.
no, we're yeah. It seems as though that this one looks different than this one. This alien has a different shape and facial structure to this one, and along with that, it almost seems as this one is more hobbling, as if it was more elderly. Um, that's what my feeling is in this scene. Is you do have the two of them coming by here. They do look at each other. This one continues on. And then this one blinks with their eye. You can see it's closed in this image down below,
Mhm.
whereas it's larger over here. But it does to me seem like they do have differences of appearances. Um,
I think that tracks well with abductee cases as well. I know a few of us, few people we've interviewed, as they've described in their accounts that even in the same groups of grays, that there are different genetic lines that they are maybe have more of a reptilian look. Their eye shape might be a little bit different or more forward. That there's different kind of genetic pools that they are able to make these, make these bodies and stuff. So
skinnybob.info. I've told you, Jeff, before we started the interview, is that I've lost hours upon hours reading up on that stuff and looking at and analyzing all of the panoramics and everything. is that someone brought out that if we look at different species, if we look at different species on Earth, birds, for instance, okay, male birds typically have more plumage colors, color variations, okay. Female birds typically do not. All right. If we were to look at certain like reptiles and other creatures, males will have more of a crest on their head. Females may not. So I know that part of the conversation was as well. Skinny Bob, at the height thing or whatever, seems to have different like ridges than perhaps some of the other ones that are seen on Family Vacation, which you showed screenshots of there in a collage. And so that's showing a discrepancy in the entities that they're trying to showing. So then again, this is fake. Well, again, there's a lot of life on Earth to where male and female will have different attributes physically. And a lot of times that's displayed in the head. So we have to also kind of try to take nature into account, just sheer nature into account when we're looking at these things. And I just find all that stuff extremely fascinating. So I just wanted to point that out as well. And that could be the discrepancies between like head structure, eye structure, and stuff like that differences.
It's the details that get you. For
It
me,
is.
it's just the details in this. I mean, you got somebody that's moving a little bit up here.
Yeah, let's
Their
go back to
wrist,
that.
their wrist kind of is down here. So I'll play the clip and just watch over on the left here. So this person is seemingly standing up a little bit more, um, standing up a bit more, leaning over a tiny bit more. Then there's like a bit of a sleeve here that pokes out. Right at the end there, there was a bit of a sleeve, um, right there. There. So at the bottom here, there's this little wedge that comes out. I also believe it's in the beginning, perhaps. I can't remember, but um, it does show that it does seem to be somebody over top. Um, Definitely leaning over when Skinny Bob's looking over. Person comes back up more when Skinny Bob's looking up. Yeah, and it does match with that William Smith video where it talks about the video is clipped. It is cropped on the left-hand side. And I have a comparison that does show um, that even in the standing scene, it still is a sharp line rather than this smooth blended line of the film, possibly. So the other thing I wanted to show that I thought was a really cool observation I made a while ago was just watch Skinny Bob's mouth. He's looking down, looking off the side. It's closed. You can kind of tell it's closed. Mouth is open. Mouth is open. Possibly closed. Closed, closed, closed. Open, closed. So these are two sections apart with very similar head placements, and it does show Skinny Bob is opening his mouth and closing it. So these are just two frames that are going back and forth, but it's a detail, like you have to include these
Right.
little details of open mouth, closed mouth, and then it's also graded. So especially that last segment here where he comes down, it's closed, open, closed.
Yeah.
It's the details.
I want to add
Uh,
to with the just opening and closing the mouth, and especially just overall head movement. But if this is fully CGI, let's just go down that path for just a split second.
yeah,
This entire thing would have to be fully rigged, and that takes so much time. That would take so much time for just the basic movements, let alone having like the, I know we're going to go over the next stuff, but like just the micro movements that is happening with Skinny Bob. I've done 3D work before, that like trying to rig something like this, let alone being pre-built, like building it from scratch and then doing all the body movements to be realistic, is just a next level amount of professional work for no credit or no money whatsoever. So it's
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. Yeah, we know it's not been monetized. Didn't have any advertisements for the first 10 years or so of its existence. And then YouTube changed their policy that allowed them to put advertisement over any video that they wanted. And then it now has advertisement in the beginning. There's something about his neck muscle that, as a guy who did early education and kinesiology, physical education, um, I am drawn to the physiology of Skinny Bob and how his movement and his sort of musculature and how it shapes and shifts. But if you watch his back neck here, it kind of goes through a lot of different movements, stretching. There's up and down. It stretches out long there, it goes down, and then right at the end there's like a bulge. It really bulges right at the end there. And to me, again, this is all just you have to make these things and you have to make the muscle move in very dynamic ways that doesn't line up with me for a latex skin. So if this was, a latex mask over someone, you don't end up getting the stretching and dynamic of the bulging and the twisting and the extension in different areas. You just get basically a large stretching membrane rather than something that has uh, a, a bulge to it. So the neck muscle dynamics of seated skinny bob. So we have these are the larger scenes, the larger frame on the bottom here. So this is just zoomed in on the top here. So you have a fairly neutral neck here. This one is stretched the most. It's flattened. It's like he's turning his head a bit more. And then it's fairly neutral again. So this is similar to this one. And then you have a bulged angle that comes out. This is something that is very
Good
detailed to
captures.
me. Yeah, yeah. And you have to make that. If you're going to be making this in CGI or whatever, you actually have to make this and make a detail of this. So it's so far beyond anything that was created at the time and since. Um,
You
and
would
then,
have to make a under. You would have to make a under muscle structure
mm,
below the skin. You
mm,
when they do CGI, like let's say a horse, they have to build everything from the bones, muscle, how
mm,
the skin refracts light, everything. They have to build that all on itself. That bulge, how it does, because if it was just kind of being moved, like let's say 3D, it wouldn't bulge like that. That
mm,
has to be would have to be fully built, which again would be an insane amount of work just to be a hoax.
mm,
What's what's interesting and what comes to mind is that even the nature of these videos coming out, like let's say they were legitimate, a question could pop up and probably already has come up in many people's minds. Well, if it's real, why did they leave it up for so long? Why did they leave these videos up? I mean, we kind of live in an age where it's very easy to dismiss or call something CGI or say it's fake. And in and of itself, the videos themselves kind of protect them from someone saying they're real or not real, both. So it's like they don't really have to do anything, which is
mm,
very interesting. But
Well, yeah. Plus, you
yeah,
throw over the timestamp. Throw over some filters, some grainy filters.
yeah,
And it's really left to the viewer, which
hmm
I love about the Skinny Bob. That it's I potentially, I don't know if it's too early to say, but I might as well. I side on the favor of being real, and that certain filters and such have been thrown on top of it to try to let you really come up to your own conclusion and possibly to mask where it's coming from or the
yeah,
part of the original footage. I do believe that Ivan had more. I do believe that somewhere out there's just inner feeling that there's some
mm,
stuff that we has not been released and may never be released that is in someone's custody, obviously. One
right,
thing I wanted to kind of point out when I was watching this specific clip 2 days ago, because I had seen somebody on a forum or somewhere saying that, well, this is obviously CGI because, again, going back to the clothing, when Skinny Bob's shoulder moves, the shoulder that's closest to us on the camera moves, that the fabric seems to stretch. Well, I mean, I didn't really see it, but what I noticed more was it was almost like I felt it when I saw it. There you go. Okay, see how he's rotating his elbow?
yep,
yeah,
totally.
Okay. And just what you're saying about the neck muscle there, I felt that. I can feel that rotary turn
Mm,
of that elbow underneath the cloth. That's not just some skeletal, you know, 2D, flat digitally drawn with the 3D rendering over it. I can see the ball joint of the shoulder moving and rotating in that sleeve. And that's
and
just go ahead, Jeff.
oh, and his right arm too. You can't. his right arm
Yeah.
bulges up, like it goes
Hmm.
pointy and then goes flat.
See how it
So
rolls?
it's both shoulders that are having some dynamic movement within them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that just to me is just like, wow. I mean, that again would be an added detail that I would think that anybody that's trying to do even a good hoax would probably pass. You know, they would miss, or
Hmm.
something. So,
All of this is hundreds of hours of work,
oh yeah,
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
just
if
like,
more.
if it's fake, make it again. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody has. The one thing I did notice here is, do you see this little, like, sort of like bulge on the top here, and then this line coming down the side, this little
A vein.
whatever that is? It kind of bends over a little bit more. It's, right bent over here,
hmm
less bent, less bent, less bent. So this also is kind of moving. That when his head is all the way up, this is mainly straight up, and then
Mm.
it has a nice curl to it when his head is down. I think that's, again, these little skin details that are added. And yeah, like it's not beyond the possibility of a professional film quality, because I did an assessment. But basically, what I did, this is the second round that I did, and I found out static images, full CGI, and motion capture aliens and alien-like beings that can compare to the time period of Skinny Bob. So these are all just images, videos that exist on YouTube. Um, and these first ones are static CGI examples. So you can have people that can make highly detailed images, um,
sure,
um, but they're static. So here's somebody that's creating one in ZBrush at the time. Um, and you can get really fine detail. There's no question you can get really fine detail.
sure,
But then um, animating that over a period of time, that's where it gets lost. That's where it has to be a professional film quality to have that level of animation. Um, and it is possible. There was some of the Avatar videos, and then also, um, who is it? Smeagol. What's the other name of this? Not Smeagol, but
oh,
Gollum.
Gollum.
Gollum. Thank you. Yes, Gollum. So Gollum was another noteworthy, example. So this shows, if you go through this shows like the progression from 2008. Like here's one from 2000. I'll just open it. Hopefully it doesn't do the ZBrush commercial. This commercial. So yeah, you can see like this is representative of the time,
Yes,
of 15 years ago, in 2008. So 2 years before Skinny Bob. So you can make lots of detail, but you can't make it move as easily. So then the next section that I have down below is full CGI examples, full body or limb movement, aimed at simulating human being. So there's Men in Black. There's a scene from that where it shows the little puppet alien inside the head controlling. It's a mix of real and CGI. Um, there's just a list. So again, somebody can do their own assessment. Um, there is there's the closest one is Gollum, or also in 2012. So this is a year afterwards. The Amazing Spider-Man. They did a phenomenal job with this. So this is the fight scene here,
yes,
and lots of detail, lots of movement. And the final version of it is like very convincing when they put it all together. I think it's
But again, this is
in one.
team. This is like a teams of
Totally.
like high profile studios working on this, and this is a
Yep.
huge pipeline.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So here's a clip of it. Like they did a phenomenal job. So this is fully CGI. So this isn't motion capture, but this is fully CGI. And they did a phenomenal job on this. But that, yeah, you're right. It's a full production. Um, and I'm not saying Skinny Bob is. Um, it doesn't even have that much content. There's a lot of content in there, movement. And then I have the next section here is the motion track captures examples. So this is where they use not full CGI, but motion capture with the dots or the points.
mm,
And there's a whole bunch of them. There's a lot of examples. The closest example is, of course, Paul from the movie Paul. Um, and this is a CGI section here, very close up. He's got smooth skin. It's close up. That's real. That's a real person's hand. But his eyes are big, and you can see he's fully illuminated. They did a good job. But to me, Paul has less sort of physical detail and
Mhm.
movement than what Skinny Bob does. But
Mhm.
this is subjective. Like some people may feel differently. Um, that's the closest one. It's like so close. It's the same year that it came out, probably produced in a period of just before. Um, yeah. And then we got like, in 2002, you have Gollum, Schmeagol in Lord of the Rings. It was the second one that he mainly was in, I believe. Hulk from 2003, The Incredible Hulk again. These are all facial. These are all, sorry, motion capture. And then, so yeah, Avatar was in 2009. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that Skinny Bob could be motion capture. That's my
Yeah.
opinion, if it were to be fake. Um, but
This doesn't
to
give me
me,
that feel.
I agree. It doesn't give me that feel as well. Um,
Motion
yeah,
capture tech back then, especially, was unless you were a big budget studio, was
yeah.
almost next to impossible to get that unless you spent over 100,000. I've looked into it when I was working in different production companies. So, if you were to get stuff now, Unreal Engine does offer you to do mocap through your phone or other like devices, which is they're developing software, right now that is really
Mhm.
good. That you can do live in Unreal Engine, but that was not something that was available back then. And if you were doing anything like, so you were mentioning Gollum. So Gollum, they did do motion capture for those dots and everything else, but they still had to go in manually animate him by hand by dozens of artists. They still had to do that back then. I think it was when they made the switch for I believe it was Davy Jones in Pirates 2 is where they
Mhm.
started really doing more mocap. But again, that was Disney and that was what a workshop and they also worked on, I believe. And that would have been, the world's top production companies working on that. So yeah, it's sorry, it is like it's hard for me to believe that this is just oh yeah, it's just mocap and just write it off because it's very very hard to do that, especially back then.
Yeah,
Tell you what,
yeah.
man, that Skinny Bob's got probably a stronger neck than most bodybuilders, and
I
that's just
agree.
because
His
yeah.
people say his neck is small. The
Look at
front
it.
view kind of maybe looks like it's small, but
Mhm.
this view, his neck looks chonky. Like it looks
You
strong.
need those muscles to carry that big head.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's just another detail though that speaks out to me that, again, and we all look at it humanity tends to look at anything that's humanoid, it would have to be like, well, it has to be the same structure that we are. Well, I mean, my head isn't as big as
And
Skinny Bob's. I know a lot of people's egos are larger than Skinny Bob's head, but that doesn't really require a thick neck. But that's one thick neck. That's one
yeah,
thick
and
bit.
he's got a neck muscle, this neck muscle in the back here. We don't
Yes.
have that neck muscle. Like we
No.
don't have, we have a sternocleidomastoid muscle in the front
Mm,
that goes to the back. And that may be a similar one, but it doesn't go so far back onto his head as ours does.
mhm.
Um,
Another
yeah,
detail.
it's a detail. Yeah, yeah.
And it's a detail
Um,
if they were faking it, they would have to know the anatomy that somehow that muscle would be required for that head, which would not really be possibly something that artists or a 3D animator that would be building would probably think about.
his hands have, especially in the other clip too, he has kind of dark thumb fingernails.
Hmm.
That's something that's been noted. Um, one of the things that I get drawn to here is the tendons. So he has a very pronounced tendon here, and less so here because of the lighting, possibly. We have very similar tendons in our bodies, um, and they make sense from strength perspective. You don't want to have all your muscles in your fingers because your fingers would be massive. You want to use pulleys. Pulleys are tendons, and they help, make your fingers more, dexterous and nimble to be able to pick up small things. I think there's a lot of convergent evolution that would occur between aliens and our existence. Intelligent life needs. I make this joke. It's a joke. It's a half joke, but it's half serious. But you don't see horses building supercomputers or bridges. Like their hoofs just don't allow them to pick stuff up. You need either tentacles, you need something that allows you to grip and hold and pick up and move and allow fine motor detail too. So in this scenario, like I do think there would be a lot of overlap between intelligent beings, and that can go into, well, why would their head be on the top? What happens if their brain is in their foot? Well, you kind of you want to reduce the transmission time, and you want to have your eyes up near the top or your front. You know, you're not going to have eyes on your butt because then you can't see out the front where your body's going. You want to have full visibility and protection. So I think there'd be a lot of convergent evolution, and it makes a lot of sense to me that they would have the structures of their hand. And, you know, we don't necessarily need 5 fingers. We could get by with 3 fingers or 4 fingers. We could get by with 6 fingers. So there's some variability that could occur. In this case, Skinny Bob has 4 fingers, so a thumb and three other fingers. Um, but I find it subtle, like all these little subtle hand movements here, you know, in the beginning of this clip, little finger movements. Like, why put in such detailed little finger movements? And they're so refined. Again, it's either somebody faked this and did a phenomenal job, or it's a real filmed event. And I like to think that, you know, I lean towards it being a filmed event because of how many details exist throughout this whole film series. What I did was I went and looked for all the different examples or similar examples for somebody leaning on their hip or contrapose stance, um, and found that from a physics perspective and from a balance perspective, in this example here, this fellow right here does the most example of this, standing on this box. You want to balance your weight all the time. And balancing your weight means having the weight of your body over one single point. You really can't stand if you don't have balance. And in this scenario, Skinny Bob is standing. He is presumably he, whatever, if it is he or she. Skinny Bob is standing on his right hip. His left leg is more supportive. It's not the primary load. And what happens is when you do that, when you start stand on a right hip, you kind of bring your shoulders over and your right hand will lean more because you're bringing slightly more weight over to this other side to balance. And in these examples here, these, I guess, what is this, 12 examples? Um, I found that in the majority of cases that I found, most people have when they're standing more on their one leg than the other, their hands are one is lower than the other, and it's always the side that um, is the leg that they're leaning on. This splotch on the side, um, this is a scenario where we wanted to know. This is an investigation that we did. The guy from skinnybob.info and myself, we did an assessment that showed, you know, how could this be where the camera either comes up linearly from the bottom and just pans up in one big unit coming up, or does it tilt upwards? So this here is the scenario that the fellow originally did and posted it to Reddit. And you can see there's 2 different scenarios, A and B. A is the camera tilting up, but if you have the camera tilting up, you can also get some parallax, or less parallax, sorry. The bottom one is where you get a lot of parallax. And the splotch on the right would move relatively to Skinny Bob. So if I go back here, if we watch the splotch, it doesn't really change in position to where his elbow is there. It makes it so that the scenario on the bottom is far less likely to be the situation that is occurring in this image. Whereas the top one, you don't get that parallax. So what I did was, because I sell posters of Skinny Bob, you can feel free to get one on Etsy.
All right, look you up, man.
Yeah. And I cut one out and put it with the splotch in the background. And I had different scenarios. I had 8 different scenarios based on, you know, doing the camera like pulling it straight up on a rail, kind of. These are these situations. So there's a possible, if Skinny Bob was right near the wall, there's a possibility, but there still is some parallax that occurs in this scenario C. But if Skinny Bob was away from the wall, you can clearly see there's parallax. Greater wall, there's tons of parallax. And
Yeah.
yeah. So then we go to this other one where you have the rotation of the camera, which is this is a scenario A up here. I did a series of them where, again, Skinny Bob close to the wall, splotch close, and then also zoom. And what we found was basically this one G was the one that matched the most, where Skinny Bob was relatively close to the wall. And then there was the camera that was possibly zoomed in and panning from his knees up to his head. So when looking at this one, basically this scenario here, where Skinny Bob has the stadiometer above his head, the height measurement tool, and then just pans from the base to his head.
So would that possibly indicate that it was a remote controlled camera then?
Well, I would say possibly not, and the
Okay.
reason I say that, and I'll give hopefully a good piece of evidence for this. Okay, that's do the here. This is it. Okay, so see how these two on the right here, see how one is cropped on either side. This down below in our presentation view, you can see that the camera wavers off to the right a little bit and then comes back. So these different frame edges either line up or they don't. And that means the camera kind of came over to the right and then kind of came back to the left a little bit. So if it was remote operated, I would imagine they would have only a linear
Yes.
pan up and it would be very straight. Whereas I believe that this is a scenario where, much like how the skinnybob.info, this one here, I have, oh, I don't have it, it's behind me. I think it's behind me. Anyway, it's somewhere in my house. I have a tripod stand with a handle on the back that I can put a camera on the top and then just tilt it down where it rotates up. And I believe that is the scenario that is happening in this view.
Okay.
Whether or not you want to believe it's a hoax or a physical scenario or motion capture or whatever, I believe that this is the most likely scenario with somebody holding the camera and tilting it down and the camera coming up. Okay, so then one more detail here at the end of this clip. Skinny Bob is, I believe, leaning on his right hip. And what happens is right at the end of the clip, he actually shifts his weight to the other side. So right there, he's starting to shift his weight back to the rest of his other hip. And it's such a detail that, yeah. And the other detail that I find in that is that the back of his head moves before the front of his head, which is kind of logical if your front of your head kind of whips around. It doesn't lead where you're going. It kind of follows the back of your neck because that's where the first amount of movement is going. This video was a response video, and I call it the response video because, I have no one about alien and UFO documents. A response video. It has what I find fascinating about this one is it has the handprint in the background. And this video, if people don't know about it, it was kind of a response to people complaining or believing they thought it was fake or arguing over the reality of it or not. Um, and so I guess Ivan chose to make um, a response and kind of say, maybe you're looking in the wrong direction. You are the one that reject this material. Um, and so it's just a response that way. But something that's unique about this video is that it provides this handprint, which is a pretty interesting handprint. It could be just a stretched and digitally, photoshopped image of a human handprint. But if you take it at face value, it quite possibly could be a real handprint. Its sizing relatively matches that of Skinny Bob and had his hand size. I have a comparison in there, somewhere in there, my files. And his thumb pad is quite a bit larger, stretched out. Yeah, yeah. So there's not much to this. Anybody can go on this and read this. I don't pay too much attention to this, but it just seems that Ivan was a little bit, you know, perturbed that people weren't taking it seriously or that they were complaining about the quality or what have you. And I think this is interesting. The material does not belong to any film, video game, television series, and nobody's been able to show that. Early on, there was lots of conversation that this was just from, Super 8, which is a movie by Steven Spielberg, a viral campaign, and none of the content has been able to be traced to the content, not the overlays, but the content themselves hasn't been traced to any other source. So, yeah. Just like they said, no one who is out of this can prove he has in his possession the original material. It hasn't come out, and so we haven't seen anything. The revelations of further material will depend on the events and the people, and we haven't. You are the ones who create your own misinformation. I love that final. I've
Mm-hmm.
used that as a line before. So Family Vacation starts off with more text as well. Um, there is, Contact that talks about 1942 and how, that's where presumably the other videos were from. Um, this one is from more along the lines of the 60s, presumably. There was a treaty. Yeah, people can read it. And then, yeah, there's, three subjects were on site and they were filmed without their permission. And the treaty was revoked and because they made a mistake because they weren't supposed to be filming.
Oh, humans.
And then the whole clip, though, I want to say before I show it, it's like 9 seconds long. So it goes from 12 seconds here, 12 to, yeah, 21. So basically 9 seconds. So again, you have to make a whole scenario and scene just for 9 seconds to show off. Yeah, it's crazy. The kind of rate,
That being at the end is just like, I see you.
yeah.
You think these big eyes are for?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's another
and
thing.
actually, so there does seem to show a ground crease, like from the ground to the wall right here.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
You kind of
see.
see that there's a line from where the wall starts and the ground.
Mhm. Looks consistent.
Yeah, it looks consistent. Looking at each other, the one kind of blinks, goes down to the ground, comes back up. Yeah, so here's a stabilized view of it. 7 seconds. I think it's a little sped up, I think. Yep. It's hard to see. There's just so much shaking going on.
I still see it though. Like now that you pointed it out, I can't like unsee it.
But the ground?
Yeah, the little crease between the floor and the ground.
Also, the way he is moving his head as all they're walking with that head movement, with it being larger, it's definitely leading his body.
Hmm. Yeah, this is sped up. This is sped up. But
Yeah, it is. Hmm.
it does show that, the one in the middle here, it is blinking a little bit more right near the end before it shoots off to find the other one. There's a skip in time in here. It shows, I believe, some people that walk by, some humans that walk by in front.
Hmm.
And then it comes back onto this one, which is the main part where it's looking at the camera and most stable. Yeah. And they don't seem to have, this one doesn't seem to have a big bug eye. And it could be the shadowing here of the darker eyes here too. Um, yeah, yeah,
You can see the
um,
wall right there on the top left one there.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
The fluidic movement that they have with their bodies walking, even as they're looking at each other, it's very, to me, it seems very fluid, but not
yeah,
to the point. It doesn't seem like it's real janky or anything like that, like animatronics or puppetry would show. It seems very fluid. Their pace is right along pretty much with each other. There is kind of a little bit of catching up that the one in the foreground it
yep,
has with like the background, so it's kind of like they're
yep,
not just walking simply side by side. And actually, the one in the foreground moves past the one in the background. It
yep,
seems, as far as perspective shows, as an
yep,
artist, perspective is a big thing for me. And so when I look at those things, and then of course the one that's kind of trailing behind, I almost get the sense from it. It's like, oh, you are the one that's recording us. Like it senses
yeah.
the camera.
Mhm.
Maybe that's why the treaty was blown. For anybody that's interested, just as a side note, those are actual treaties. Now, whether it mentions there being uh, entities that are involved in those talks, those are actual treaties that you can look up that are historically factual as far as our place in going into space exploration and how, as individual countries, we are agreed to behave by. So whether this is all fake and Ivan and his crew, or just on his own put that in there to make it seem like it was more legitimate or not, those are actual treaties. I suggest people look those up. But there's always that debate of, well, it's too fuzzy, or well, it's too clear, and no one's ever happy. And for me, this just and I appreciate you cleaning up these still frames. Um,
Yeah, the person from Reddit that did clean
yeah,
these up. Yeah, I have to
yeah,
give credit to them. I don't remember who it is though.
sorry. Credit to the individual that did this.
Yes.
Thank you so very much for that. But just looking at the raw images, because actually on Skinny Bob Reddit, on that Reddit, they actually have a link to frame by frame pictures of each of these videos are available for you to look at, which is just astounding to me. So I was like, treasure trove. And I started looking at them the other day, and it's just phenomenal. It just screams, man. I told my fiance this last night. I was like, you know what? I've looked at this stuff off and on for years, and every couple months, especially this year, I've looked at it, and I try to sit down and go, okay, I'm just going to clear my mind on what I believe and what I don't believe about any of this footage. I'm going to act like I'm sitting down and watching this for the first time, and I'm not going to try to put my mind on real or fake. And every single time I come away going, God, there's something there. It's real. It's hidden by some filters and some other things, but it just calls to me that it's real
Yeah,
deep
I
down.
agree. It it doesn't match. It doesn't match anything that has been created, especially if you go back to like say 2011. Um, it just doesn't match. It doesn't match the weight and the quality of film and of any type of hoax. Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ivan, anybody that helped produce this, right? I mean, this has been 13 years ago. You're not making any money off of this. What would be the problem now to finally be like, hey, I'm glad you guys like bought it or didn't buy it for 13 years, but here's your proof and have the rubber mask. Because I know some
Yeah.
in the community, some ufologists in the community believe that the Skinny Bob is a child with a mask on and all
Hmm.
that stuff, and that kind of, personally disappoints me. But hey, we all have our opinions, and sometimes they differ. It's
Hmm.
just there's been no proof whatsoever as of yet to say that this is real or to say that it's
Hmm.
completely fake. And I know that there's a reward that's being offered for anybody that can come up with the
Wait,
proof.
it has passed.
It has
Last,
passed.
it
Okay.
has passed. Yes. So in 2021, yeah, in 2021, I released a 30,000 US dollar reward for definitive proof from the owner of the content, so proof that they had made it, or a minute and a half of additional content. It started off as $30,000, then 6 months later it dropped to 15,000. So there was a impetus for someone to come out early. Then after 6 months, it dropped to 15, and then it went to 10, and then 5. And then in this last October 2023, that's when it fully was removed. And I think it was probably a couple months ago, a few months ago, 3 months, 4 months ago, I released my final review, my results of it, and I stated that there was one person plus sort of a half person that was stating to kind of support the first person, um, stating that they made the film series, but they didn't have any definitive actual
Mhm.
proof. Um, and then somebody stated that their husband had the full film in their desk in Europe, and all they wanted was the flight money to get there and back.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah,
so
no.
well, but the thing is, they were the email that they sent was very sincere and seemed to have a really good story. It didn't seem off. The problem that I blame myself a little bit on this was I just come off of the other person trying to scam me, and I was a little
Mhm.
bit skeptical. Um, and my dad at the time was having health problems, and yeah, he's no longer with us for a year now. But he that was more on my mind than dealing. I was really put this away. I put this topic away for a while, and unfortunately, this I didn't get back to this person for about 5 weeks, because it was for me. My reasoning was I really wanted to spend the time to respond in a sincere and kind way that supported what I needed, but also supported what they needed, which was anonymity.
Mhm.
Um, and so it took me hours to write the email and come up with a plan of how it could work. Um, and read it, reread it, and I sent it off to the same email, and I didn't hear a reply. I followed up a couple months later and said, hey, maybe you might get this or not. Email still went through, it didn't get bounced back. And then prior to me releasing my results of the reward, I asked one more time, did they want to try and work this out? Didn't hear back from them. So whether or not it's a hoax or not, I kind of I hope the person would still reach out to me.
Yeah.
Maybe they might, but yeah, I couldn't just give away money to send them
No.
across to Europe. I
No.
needed accountability. I offered to even meet them at the airport to go with them, or them at periodic checkpoints. I could transfer them money, but how would I transfer them money if I don't have their name? And so
Right.
I had a bunch of scenarios. Yeah.
What whole thing is that time ran out, and whoever made this, if this was made, they could have at least recouped some of their losses because this would have been expensive. What was it thought of at the time about how much this would have estimated cost? Was it
Well,
like
Ben
twenty
Phillips,
thousand
who came
pounds?
up earlier before, he made an estimation that it would have been in the couple $100,000 to create the whole film series. What I've appreciated about Ben is that, he hasn't really been involved a lot in the film series, and it was early on that it was probably in 2019 that he made his post on Reddit, on the alien subreddit, that kind of detailed what he thought. And I thought it was a very balanced view of the scenario and the situation and how it could be created or not. Um, and using what techniques, given that he works in the film industry and he was public about his name and there was traceability. So I really do appreciate that he took the time to um, to detail what he thought, and it was in the couple 100,000. Now I can't remember if it was in pounds, UK pounds, or if it was in US dollars, but they're approximately similar. So
Ivan,
yeah,
you're probably not going to watch this, um, but man, thank you, or woman, not to say. We don't know, but we do appreciate you putting this out, regardless of what the outcome will eventually be if we ever get to one. Just thanks for, really just stirring our imagination and bringing out perhaps memories of encounters that abductees and experiencers have had through this footage as well. And maybe really make us think deeply about our place, I guess you could say, in creation, because whether real or not, the universe is a large place that's shown up behind me, and there's going to be life that's going to be teeming everywhere. I'll go ahead and hand it off to my guys. And before then, Jeff, man, I know that you may have some more stuff to go over, but I'd just like to say thank you for coming on and sharing all of this information. It's vitally important. And I hope that it can at least open some more people's minds to the possibility. So thank you, Jeff. I know time is
yeah,
precious.
no problem, no problem. And it's it's a good demonstration. It allows people to see the breadth of detail that there's a reason why the community has really taken the time that we have to detail every detail that exists on this film series. It's not a simple film series. It's not a quickly made weekend project. Um, it's got detail, and it's. I'm so thankful that everybody has worked together over the last 4 years or so to on the subreddit and beyond um, to just try detail everything. And that includes, I want to give a shout out to Brooklyn Robot, who did a phenomenal job with identifying the. I'm just going to scroll up here, and I want to make sure that we don't want to like skip over that. But it was the film overlays, and so yeah, here's the link. Brooklyn Robot. They did a phenomenal job at finding that the overlays were from the Sapphire package. It's all right down here by Boris FX. And I also found that the same artifact package was used in Parks and Rec, one of my more favorite shows. Um, but
Good
yeah,
show.
it's a professional film quality, a professional film package that's expensive. So whoever wanted to make this, you know, they used high quality overlays. It wasn't cheap overlays to make this. So I reflect though, John, that I believe that if there's any sort of reason that these were put on, it was for disinformation. Because if you have a real thing that's overlapped by something fake, you have fake evidence, you have doubt that it will always follow that film for the rest of its life, and that can never be proved to be true. Even if we had more content, like I was asking for the reward, even if we had more content, it wouldn't definitively prove that the video was real or that the
Yeah.
content is real.
I think it really comes down to it's whether one believes in aliens or not. It just comes down to our beliefs and what we want to believe and what we feel. And I honestly I don't see any harm if we, like all of society, just came to the realization that we might be being visited by entities from other dimensions or other planetary systems. What's the harm in that?
Hmm.
I don't know.
Hmm.
I mean, what are we afraid of? And I think it all comes down to fear. So if nothing else, at least if we can have an open mind about the possibilities of these things, I don't see how it could be destructive towards our future. And
Hmm.
so, as far as disinformation goes, yeah, obviously certain things have been thrown on, like the filters and such, that are, at least at one point was part of an expensive package. And that could be like somebody would say, okay, well, see, there you go. They're willing to invest this much money in this hoax. kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And that's potentially sure. I mean, why not? But again, what have they really gotten out of it except for that disinformation? But I
Mhm.
don't know. That's a possibility, but it just doesn't personally, and this is just personally, again, I don't want to influence anybody. It just doesn't resound with me. I get a feeling off of this stuff, and
Mhm.
and I have for a long time. So just through your analysis on points that I've never even heard of, just points me more in the direction. Again, I try to sit down here with kind of like, all right, I want to hear what Jeff has to say, and I'm not going to go on one side or the other. I'm still stuck with just personally, this is real, baby. And that's just where I'm just going to lie. And I'm okay with that. I can go to sleep at night with that. That's cool with me.
Yep. The Skinny Bob subreddit goes back now 4 years. It's slowed down now because we've found mostly all the information. There's some more details that it takes a long time to make, so I don't have as much time to dedicate it to it, but there's some information on the frame rates and the ticking sounds that I'd like to look at. Um, but no, we've got a good overview that really shows the detail that went into this video, and that's what I really like to showcase is, for me, it's the plethora of details, the content, the breadth of content, and then for me, what stands out is really the physiological and physical, real, like applicability stuff that exists in the film. I think it's
Yeah.
funny. Some people have hypothesized that I made the film series and I'm playing this long Kong, but it's like I know for myself, there's absolutely no way I could pull this off. I don't have the skills. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I have a whole career on the side of this. So,
Right. Right.
Mm.
Just wake up one day, be like, I feel like I'm just gonna hoax a UFO alien video. Why not? I got
yeah,
nothing else better to do. No, I don't think
no,
so.
no,
And you'd be making a heck of a lot more money now if you were, because you.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
So, all right,
I would
guys.
tell people. I don't think I could lie that long.
Me neither.
No.
Me neither.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, again for showcasing that and going through all those amazing details. If people are wanting to either contact you or get in touch with the group, where can they find them?
Yeah, so Skinny Bob subreddit. So go to Reddit, type in Skinny Bob. R Skinny Bob is what it is. I have an email address. I have a Proton email address or a Gmail email address, but the Gmail one is easy. It's just rskinnybob@gmail.com. Some people reach out to me there, but I have a Twitter, but I haven't really been using it too much. Don't really care to, but it's
Yeah,
also an important platform for sharing information.
it is.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you for
Thanks so
sharing.
much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
appreciate and please, everybody that's watched, please like, share, subscribe. Check out the Skinny Bob subreddit. Check out other interviews that Jeff has been involved in because we're not the only ones. We're just thankful that he decided to spend the time with us today. And
Yeah.
if you come across any more like really big information, I'm sure it'll be on the Reddit, but ask a personal favor if you just get in contact with us and let us know, and we'd love to have you on again to discuss any new information that might come out because you never know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
There's a lot of information that it can be discovered. Go to Reddit, search, make sure to do searches. There's a lot of content that's been, re-brought up. But if there's something big that comes out, like, yeah, for sure, we're happy to discuss. I'm happy to discuss again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. And I hope you have a good evening. I hope everybody has enjoyed the show. And again, keep your mind open. Thanks, everybody. Love you all.
To near-death experiences and reincarnation reports.
Bad monkey.